In today's video, you're gonna learn how to add dynamics to your scene in Cinema 4D. Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Nick here from Greyscalegorilla, helping you make better renders in less time. Now today's video is all about one of my favorite features in Cinema 4D, and that's dynamics. If you've ever wanted stuff to bounce around and explode in Cinema 4D, this is the video to watch. Now at first I'm gonna show you just the basics of dynamics, how to set it up. And if you stay tuned toward the end of the video, we're gonna make this render right here. Now don't be afraid if you've never used Cinema 4D. This is really geared towards somebody just approaching. It's really easy to use. In fact, if you haven't used Cinema 4D, if you're just learning, check out our Intro to Cinema 4D series. It's completely free. You can get the details down below in the description, or you can also click right up here. We're gonna try to add one of those cards so you can go right to it and learn all about Cinema 4D. All right, so in today's video, there's only one more thing I wanna make sure you have, and that's the right version of Cinema 4D. Now, dynamics has been around for quite a long time in Cinema 4D, but you have to have either the broadcast version or the studio version. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna add some more stuff in the description just so you can learn some of the differences. Just so you know, the dynamics are only available in those versions of Cinema 4D. All right, that's it. Enough talking. Let's get stuff animating in Cinema 4D. Let's go. All right, here we are in Cinema 4D, and let me show you how easy it is to get dynamics set up in Cinema 4D. So first thing we're gonna grab is this cube right here. And the second thing we're gonna grab is a plane. Now, the plane is gonna be our floor, and the cube is gonna be the dynamic object that kind of falls from the sky, hits the floor. So let me show you how easy that is to set up. First of all, grab your cube, and you're gonna wanna zoom out a little bit, and that's by holding number 2 on the keypad. You can move out, and then you wanna make sure your cube is selected to just move it up in the air. Next thing you're gonna wanna do is add the dynamics tag to your cube. So it's this easy. Make sure the cube is selected, go to tags, go to simulation tags, and click rigid body. Now hit play. Already we have dynamics on our cube. It's that easy to set up. The only other thing we have to do is tell the floor to also be dynamic, and then now when the cube hits the floor, you'll be all set. So if you select your plane, before we add it, we can actually scale up our plane. And this is the scale tool. If you click this and then just drag in your timeline, click and drag like that, it'll make a bigger floor. And then if you select your plane again, go to tags, go to simulation tags again, and this time you want to click collider body. Now the difference is a rigid body will move around and have gravity applied to it. A collider body basically just stays where it is. It doesn't fall with gravity. So now we should have everything we need to get a full dynamic simulation. Now you see when the cube falls, it kind of bounces on the floor. And those settings can actually be tweaked. If you stay highlighted on this tag here, all the settings should show up at the bottom of your screen down here. Let me just close up top coat. We might not need that for this tutorial. But down here, you're gonna see all these tabs. And one of the tabs is collision. Under collision, you could do things like turn up the bounce really high. We could actually turn it to 90. Look at how high that bounces. We could actually go above 100% and have this thing bounce around like crazy, right? Not very realistic, but super fun, right? Okay, let's turn this back down a little bit lower and talk about other ways to set up dynamics. Well, there are also things in Cinema 4D called cloners, and this is under the MoGraph menu. This is one of my favorite menus I use all the time, and if you're new to Cinema 4D and you're just learning, you'll see me use this menu all the time in our tutorials. But in this video, we're just going to use the cloner. So I want you to open up the MoGraph, go to cloner, and bring the cube object into the cloner object. And then what I want you to do is grab that scale tool and scale down your cubes so that they're small enough to see all the different parts of them. Now grab your cloner, grab your move tool, that's this one here, move it up, and now go to your cloner settings and go to grid array. This is gonna make basically like a Rubik's Cube of cubes here. And what's really great is the dynamics work on all of them together at once. So now you don't just have one object falling and bouncing around, you have a bunch of them, right? And this works no matter how you adjust the settings. You could turn it up and have more clones, right? You can adjust them. We could turn our original object
So it's like we could grab our rotate tool now and just rotate it a little bit so it falls a little unevenly. And it falls into a pile. And again, we could look at our collision settings. Remember our collision settings? We have bounce, but we didn't talk about friction. See how all these cubes are just sliding around like this? We could actually come up here and say, let's go like this. Let's turn up our friction so now when it falls, it's a little bit more realistic. And really, these are the basics of dynamics. There's a ton that dynamics do, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how easy it is to set up. Now, if you're new to Greyscalegorilla tutorials, we don't leave you hanging with a gray render. Almost never. We always try to make it look good because that's the other part of motion design. We got the motion all set up, but we really have to apply the design stuff. So how do you make stuff look good? How do you set up a scene that makes sense and not just a test scene in Cinema 4D? And that's something we do on almost every one of our tutorials if you haven't seen our stuff before. So I wanted to give you an example of that. So let's make a new scene, and all I did was hit Command N on my keyboard to open a new scene in Cinema 4D. And we're just going to build a really simple little dynamic scene that's fully lit, all ready to go. So first thing I'm going to do is grab a plane. So start the same. We're going to scale it up. And the next thing I'm going to do is grab a cube. And now what I want to do is go to our cube, go to our object tab, and I want to shrink it down in the y-axis. You can see our cube is kind of shrinking down. I also want to shrink it in the x-axis. And what I'm building is a little step. Let me just turn off the plane for a second. And I'm building a little stair. And I'm also turning up the z-axis. Okay, now we grab our cloner just like we did before. We put the cube inside the cloner, and this time let's go to our cloner, leave it on linear mode, and now adjust our clones so that they move up like a staircase. So I want down in the Y, and then I want back in the X position so it builds a little staircase. And in order to make new stairs, all we have to do is go to the count and turn this up. So we're just building a little staircase for a bunch of stuff to fall down on. Okay, next thing we do is we grab a plane. Now, take the plane, scale it up just like before, and this will be our kind of our ground plane. We can move this down. And this will be the general part of our scene. Now, let's grab a sphere, and let's grab our cloner just like we did, and put the sphere inside a cloner. And this time, let's grab the grid array again. And now what we want to do is scale down the sphere. And don't worry if I'm going too fast, you could always rewind it. Make sure you're following along. I'm scaling down the sphere with our scale tool. I'm going to move our cloner object up in the air and back. And I'm just setting up my scene with a bunch of particles basically hanging out way up over here. And then they're all going to fall down and they're going to bounce down the stairs and roll off on the floor. And we're going to set that whole scene up. And this is how we're going to do it. So now that we have our grid array, what I want you to do is scale up your axis here. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. You could do this here in your object settings under grid array, or there's these little orange like tab things, these little buttons that you can grab and actually scale your system right in the viewport. So this is pretty cool. So we could spread this out, and we're also going to turn up the count so we have way more particles here. And this is basically the start of our animation. When we hit play, we want all of these spheres here to fall down the stairs. And if you're seeing me move around the viewport like this, what I'm using is my mouse, and I'm also using 1, 2, and 3 on my keyboard to rotate for 3, scale for 2, and to move around for 1. So just wanted to let you know if you're not sure how that's happening. Okay, so what do we need to do now? Well, when we hit play, nothing happens, right? No dynamics are set up, nothing's here, but our scene is all set. So let's go to sphere. Let's go to simulation tags, rigid body. Let's go to cube, tags, simulation tags, rigid body. And remember, actually, no, we don't want those to move. We want our stairs, see how they're falling with gravity? We don't want that. I'm gonna delete that tag, go to cube, go to simulation tags, and go collider body for the stairs. And also for this plane here, I'm going to say collider body as well. So now what we have are all of our spheres falling and bouncing all over the place and rolling down the stairs. Now, you can see they kind of stack up like little snowmen for a second, and that's because they're kind of like too perfect coming out of here. So there's a couple things we could do. We can grab our cloner and we can rotate it a little bit, and that'll just offset them just enough so they roll, but it's still kind of even, right? It's not very realistic. You want to start to add imperfections and randomness to your scene to make it look a little bit more natural. And one way we could do this is with, here's the MoGraph menu again, an effector. Now, we'll get more into effectors in a ton of other tutorials that we do, but for now, I want you to just know that you want your cloner to be selected that have your spheres in it. I want you to go to MoGraph, go to effector, and hit random. Now check it out. All the spheres are now moved all around in space. And what's cool about the random effector, if you select it and go to parameter, it's not just random position that you can adjust. You can also adjust random scale. So let's go to uniform scale. Turn that uniform scale button on, and now we can adjust each one of these spheres, and now they're all different shapes. So that looks a little bit more natural, a little bit more fun as they fall to the ground, right? Okay, let's now get our scene set up. One thing that we do need for a scene is a camera. So let's grab a camera, and again, we'll get more into this in other tutorials, but for now, grab your camera, grab your focal length, and I want you to choose a lens. Now, if you're familiar with lenses, you may know that a 50mm lens is what they call a normal lens. And that just means it's kind of almost what our eyes see in a way. So let's set that up. That's a good camera. We're just navigating around the scene. And we want to just frame this up and make a nice little scene where a bunch of particles kind of fall on the ground. Now, we need to set up our output settings. And again, this is not too complicated here. You don't have to worry about all these settings here. Just go to your render settings. And in fact, if you don't have your render settings up there, you can click this button right here. And that's going to open up your render settings. And all I want you to do is type, actually, you don't even have to worry about resolution right now. Just go to your film aspect ratio and go to HDTV. Go to 16:9. And that's just going to make it look widescreen, right? Like a TV. Okay, so now we could frame up our shot. Let's frame up kind of an interesting shot here where the stairs are kind of cutting off half the screen and then the floor is the second half. So the shot will look a little bit like this. A bunch of particles falling and rolling all over the ground. So that's kind of a fun little animation, and it can be that easy to set up, right? So now, like I said before, we're not going to leave you hanging with a gray render like this. I'm going to show you really quickly how to add some simple textures and some simple lights so you can have an actual animation coming out of this that looks good. So first thing we need to do is texture our scene. Let's go to New Material, go to Create, New Material. I want you to drag this material onto our sphere, and then I want you to double click it. And then in the color settings here, I want you to just pick whatever your favorite color is. For me, I like the orange. Okay, now we got orange. Now let's go to Create, New Material, and let's add this material. All I'm doing is dragging it. I can actually drag it right in the viewport here to the floor, and I could also drag it up here in the cube to the stairs. Now this material, let's go to color, is 100% white. Let's just make it all the way white. Okay, now when we hit render, well, we have color, but now we have no lights. And lighting is really where 3D can like literally shine, right? Like lighting is everything in 3D. And so let me show you a really simple setup and how you could add some really easy lighting in your scene that looks pretty decent. So first thing I want you to do is on this light bulb up here, click the light bulb. Already we got some shadows and stuff going on. What I want you to do is under your light settings, I want you to go to type right here. And instead of Omni Light, I want you to go to Infinite Light. Okay. And under shadow, I want you to go to area shadow. Okay. Now we're going to get more into what all this stuff means. But for now, what I want you to do is grab your rotate tool, grab this little handle right here and rotate this around. We're basically making a sun. And for the sun, I want it to come on from the right back area. And you can actually see it in the viewport. You can get a little dialogue, a little visual, I guess, of where it's coming from. And I want it kind of coming from there. Just use your rotate tool. Doesn't matter that the light's in the middle of the scene. And now when you hit render, you're going to see we have some shadows. Okay, getting a little bit better, but you know, this is very 3D looking, very contrasty, and just not very appealing. So what else can we do? Well, I want you to grab a light, and again, I'm just clicking on the light bulb, And now on this light, I want you to click this button right here, ambient illumination. Click it. And now it's going to add all this great lighting to the scene. It's going to be a little bit bright, but we could dial it down right here. Intensity, let's just go to 60% intensity. Also, here's a little trick. I want you to add a little bit of blue to the light, just a little bit of blue, okay? Now, go to your other light, this is the sunlight, and add a little bit of warmth. Something like this, a little yellow, kind of warm color. And here's the other trick. Turn up that sun. Sun's bright, right? Crank it up. Now let's hit render and see what we got. Okay, it's coming along. This is looking much, much better. Now, what's missing? Well, what else is missing are all the little context shadows with the spheres on the stairs and all the little cracks in the stairs. It's all just kind of flat right now. And so I want to show you one more little lighting trick here, and that's to go to your render settings and go to this button right here, Effect. And remember, your render settings could be found right here. Click this, Render Settings, go to Effect, and click on Ambient Occlusion and do nothing else. Just click Ambient Occlusion and click back and see what we get. Now we're talking. Now we have some shadows, some context shadows with our ambient occlusion, little cracks in the stairs. See all those little shadows around where the spheres are falling? This is where it starts to look much more realistic. Okay, what else can we do to make this look even better before we render this out and really make a really fun animation? Well, to me, these little specular highlights, and that's what these are, they're called. This is a default that is on almost every texture you make, has this little specular on it. And I tend to not use specular too much. You'll see I don't really use it in a lot of our tutorials, but in this case, for just getting started, I think it'll be perfect. I want you to go open up your texture, go to reflectance, and yours might be called reflection, and that's okay. Head on into this specular here, and I want you to find these settings. I want you to turn up your specular strength, your height, and I want you to take the, not the fall off, the width, and kind of make it smaller. See these little dots? I think these will look a lot better than that big wide highlight. They almost look like little reflections of the sun, right? Much, much better. What else can we do to make this look better? And that's really what we're all about here at Greyscalegorilla, not just teaching you the techniques, but some of the design and some of the color and some of the other ways, the lighting, the composition, the things that really make renders look good. Let's go to our cube and add a fillet to our cube. And all that's going to do is round our stairs out. I'm going to turn this number down more like 3 or 4 radius. And again, let's do a render, and you're going to see now there's little cracks, or there's little roundness between the stairs, but there are cracks. We could live with that, I think. That should look fine. We can go to our cloner and move that number back if that's bugging us. And so now we won't have those little cracks there. That looks pretty good. Okay, what else can we do? Well, to me, let's zoom all the way out, and let's look at different ways that we can texture our spheres. Okay, so the first thing is I'm just going to turn down the radius of our spheres, and you could play around with this. In fact, what I would encourage you to do is you could add any one of these basic shapes in your cloner, and it'll work the same exact way. So at the end of this tutorial, if you want to keep experimenting, throw one of these in the cloner and see what happens. But for now, I wanted to show you a really, really cool shader. Now, most of you should have this. If you go to your color channel, I want you to go into this little triangle right here, and I want you to go to Effects, scroll down, go to Variation, and that's it. That's basically it. Now when we hit play and we hit render toward the end here, each one of those little spheres is going to be a different color. Right? It's not just going to be all the same color, right? And in fact, if we wanted to control what these colors are, we can go open this up, go into our gradient and turn up gradient blend, turn down random color, go to gradient mode, and go to replace. Now, if you don't have the variation shader, that's okay. We're almost done with it. It's only available in some of the newer versions of Cinema 4D. I think it came out in R16 or R17 or R16. So no worries if you don't have it, but just for now, I wanted to show those of you who have it that it's pretty fun. You can actually just dial in some different colors here. Let's grab orange, and pink's always a fun combo. And now what it's going to do is it's going to pull from that gradient all those different colors to make this render. Pretty cool, right? Okay, what else can we do? Let's go back to frame 0, and I'm just clicking this button to go to frame 0. Now, let's turn off our camera. I'm actually just going to turn off our camera, and now I'm going to see, look, half of our particles are actually falling off the back of this thing. So I'm just going to grab our spheres, move it up, move it literally up in the air, and I think we could also add a few more particles to the whole scene. Right? The Dynamics render engine is very robust. It works very fast. So we could add a ton more particles here, ton more dynamic spheres, and just throw them all over the place. Okay, I think we're getting pretty close to a final scene. However, I think our lighting needs to be tweaked just a little bit. So let's go to our sunlight. I want to turn up our sunlight a little bit. I'm also going to turn up our blue light. I think it's still a little too contrasty. I feel like that's feeling a little bit better. That's looking pretty nice. And for those of you who are still here following along, I wanted to show you one other really fun little secret inside the variation shader. And that is if you open up in the gradient here, this little triangle, you can go to load preset and you could click any one of these presets. Now, some of these presets have really cool colors on them. I tend to just pick this rainbow one because I think it's really fun. And now when we hit render, look, we got the whole color of the rainbow here, all set up, rolling around in the scene. We have a bunch of spheres. Now, I said if you waited around that we're going to add more and more stuff, and I'm telling you, not lying here. Let's rewind to frame 0. Let's turn off our camera, and let's add another object. Remember I said up here you can add other objects? Let's grab a torus. Now, this torus is way too big, right? If I throw this torus in the scene, and this is how you do it, you just grab another object and you bring it into your cloner. Make it a child of the cloner, just like that. Scale it down. That's the real key. You want to scale it down. Set up your camera, and now let's see what happens. Do any of these toruses make it? Let's see what happens. Do they fall? They don't fall. Why is that? Because they don't have a dynamics tag on them. So remember, tags, simulation, rigid body. Now we're talking here. And what's nice is because we put the variation shader up here, we could just drag it right onto our torus, and it will also get all those rainbow colors. So now hit render and check out what we have. This great little render here, very simple to set up. We actually are using some of my favorite tools inside of Cinema 4D to make this really basic scene. And again, don't worry if this is your first time here. I wanted to show you how easy it is to really set this stuff up in Cinema 4D so that you can get to play with this stuff. Because to me, when you're playing with stuff more, you're learning more. So that is how simple it could be. Now, from here, we're going to have other videos about setting up your final renders, about more lighting, about all that stuff. But I just really appreciate if you made it this far. Learning Cinema 4D has been so much fun for us, and that's why we're teaching it. We want everybody to know how fun this program is and also how easy it is to learn. So thank you so much for watching.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this video all about Cinema 4D Dynamics. Now, we just scratched the surface of what Dynamics could do, and we have a ton of more tutorials on our website and all around, all about using more Dynamics. So if you're interested, please check the description below. I'm gonna add some more links to some of my favorite tutorials that'll teach you a little bit more about Dynamics. And again, don't forget about our Intro to Cinema 4D series. We have a whole module that's all dedicated just to Dynamics. So if you're really interested in that feature the way that I am, please check that out. Got all the stuff in the description up here. And again, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We have a ton more tutorials coming out in the near future, so we hope to see you there. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. I'm glad you're learning. This is a fun program, and we'll see you in another video really soon. Bye, everybody. Iced coffee. I need some today. Who invented this? That's great. Somebody took coffee, and then they're like, the only way to make coffee is hot. And then they made it hot, and then some smart person was like, well, let's make it cold again. Ah, what a brilliant. Smart.